Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. This is our final episode specifically around the Australian Open, first Grand Slam of the year. I've joined back again by Michael Martin to kind of review all that went on during the week and the finals. So I suppose the main banner headlines: Ashleigh Barty delivered Grand Slam triumph for Australia and herself, first since 1978, beating Danielle Collins 6-3, 7-6, and then of course Rafa Nadal securing his 21st Grand Slam, beating Daniel Medvedev in a 5-hour plus thriller. Mike, how are things?
Hello, Mark. How are you doing? I'm good, thanks. Tired after watching the two lads this morning, but I enjoyed it, obviously.
Big time. And we'll probably come to that in the next few minutes, but I suppose we can start kind of chronological order. And the women's singles tournament, we've kind of flagged here, Michael, in the last two episodes, has been absolutely wide open. And I know when we spoke last weekend, we kind of had reached the fourth round quarterfinal stage. Ashleigh Barty being absolutely relentless and had dominant victories over Pegula, 6-2, 6-love. Madison Keys' resurgence was ended quite emphatically by Barty as well, 6-1, 6-3. Well, we had Danielle Collins, the Floridian. We haven't really talked about her too much in our last two podcasts, but her fourth round fixture against Mertens, superb game, 4-6, 6-4, 6-4. And then she accounted for Cornet and Swiatek. So, Mike, any kind of results there standing out for yourself between Ashleigh Barty and also Danielle Collins?
Yeah, Mark. So look, we did talk about the women's draw obviously as much as the men's in the last two podcasts. But like, if you were looking to make money, or if you were trying to guess who's going to win, well, I suppose Ashleigh Barty ended up winning it. Fair enough, she's number one seed. But like after that, the rest of the draw was just, it became really hard to predict. A lot of like surprising results. But then again, the women's tennis at the moment is so open. Maybe Barty aside, you can't be too surprised by results. They're all really good players, all around the same level. So like your number 2 and number 4 seeds were knocked out kind of in the last 16, the quarterfinals. And yeah, it nearly just depends who hits form, is in that word momentum. Like Danielle Collins being the perfect example. She just seemed to hit form for the 2 weeks, carried through the momentum, and actually got through. Like Swiatek in the semi-final, she came through that quite easily, really, like 6-4, 6-1, which would have been unexpected. But for anyone who saw Danielle Collins, she's like really aggressive player, is in the kind of woman who, when she's playing well, can beat anybody, as she showed. And yeah, just she seemed to be on form and made it through to her first Grand Slam final.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I suppose for me anyway, I think the main focus for our podcast has been really Ashleigh Barty. And to be perfectly fair, I thought the Keys performance, I thought, was not short but outstanding. Didn't give Keys a chance or an opportunity, really, winning the opening set 6-1, followed in the same vein 6-3. Her all-round game was just far superior. But it's good to see Keys, I think, back on the big stage. Hopefully bigger and better days ahead for the American. But I suppose we can lead into the actual final itself early Saturday morning, Irish time. What were your overall thoughts here, Michael, on this final?
Yeah, I watched it all actually. Yeah, so I mean, just look, Ash Barty, she's very impressive. Like we were talking last week, and we were saying she was into the quarterfinal at that stage. She was doing all the right things on the court. She was flying through her matches. She was saying all the right things off the court. Nice and relaxed. But there's no doubt she was under pressure. I mean, she became the first Australian winner of the Australian Open for 44 years. So like, you can imagine the media hype and the pressure that comes with that in Australia. But she definitely seemed to take it in her stride. I mean, she was head and shoulders above everyone. Like at the end of the tournament, she dropped 30 games in total. So like, to put that in perspective, she played 7 matches and she lost 30 games. So you're saying like four games per match. So that means she wins each match 6-2, 6-2. like it's hard to remember as kind of straightforward a Grand Slam win as that. It almost seemed too easy, but like full credit to her. I mean, she's an interesting player in that like she doesn't hit the ball as hard as other women playing the game. Danielle Collins being the perfect example. She hits it hard off her forehand and backhand. Barty really mixes it up. And basically, I think a lot of the other women, they just find it really hard to deal with her slice, with her variety. And yeah, they'll have to improve, as in they'll have to practice, for want of a better word, because Barty's always going to do that. She's going to mix it up, and they can't just expect her to hit the ball back to them and kind of have a shootout. Is it? She's just an intelligent player and kind of something different. And she was really comfortable ultimately, and great for the Australian public and Australian tennis.
Absolutely, and I think before the match, there's images of Barty with her coaching staff warming up, and again with the Ashes series, so emphatically won by the Australian men. She was having a bit of a bowl and batting with a cricket bat. It was just seemed all very composed, very relaxed, very chilled. And she kind of started the match, I thought, Mike, in pretty emphatic fashion. Very solid overall. I mean, overall, she had 10 aces, 82% first serve points won, 30 winners. Granted, offset that with 22 unforced errors. But again, as you say, Michael, her variety of play really did flummox Collins, particularly at the start. It was a bit of a nervy start, I think, from Danielle Collins as well. Michael, would you agree?
It was, yeah, but like, well, I don't know, as in, yeah, but like that's what Ash Barty does. She really, isn't it? She makes you miss, essentially. Like a lot of these women's matches, they're nearly like power competitions, nearly, as in they're hitting the ball so hard, to be fair to them. And often they end up playing against a player who's doing the same thing. So they both end up hitting the ball as hard as they can, forehands, backhands, and whoever wins wins. Whereas Barty just doesn't allow you to do that. Like, as in, she makes you go off balance. She makes you, move left and right, forward and backwards. So I can just imagine she's just awkward to play against, and she's excellent anyway. But you know what I mean. She makes you miss. That's what probably differentiates her, and she gives you variety. And that was always the danger for Collins. And she did quite well. Like, as in, don't forget, she was 5-1 up in the second set. But even when she was 5-1 up, like, you never, well, I don't know, it's easy to be wise now, but you were never overly confident she'd win the set, because like she hit a purple patch, but then that can kind of go away as fast. And like Barty can just she sticks in there, like. And yeah, it was no massive surprise, even though she was 5-1 up. It was no surprise that Barty brought it back and ended up winning that set. She's just different to most other players, and as I said, I think it'll take time. The other women players will have to adjust to that now and think, okay, what do I need to improve to beat Barty? Because she's the number one now. She very much looks justified as the number one. So it's up to them to kind of improve and say, okay, I'm really good at my forehand and backhand. I can beat most players in the world just on that. But I now need to add something so that I can take on a Barty, like, who's going to make it awkward for me.
Yeah, it's really spot on, Michael. And we can go back to that second set. I mean, ironically enough, with Barty, it was probably her mini crisis of the tournament, particularly the two breaks of serve. I think it stunned the home crowd temporarily as well when Danielle Collins, to her credit, led 5-1 in that second set. And I mean, statistics wise for Collins, she was red hot during that second set. But again, as you said, thought there was maybe one or two maybe unforced errors here, kind of let Barty back into it. And once I thought Barty got the first break of serve back, the momentum had swung back again in the Australians' favour. And I think credit Collins, kind of pulling it into the tiebreak. But I think momentum had definitely shifted in that critical kind of game when it was 5-1.
Yeah, that's it. And like Danielle Collins would play a game where there'd be, a lot less margin for error in her game than Barty's. So yeah, that word again, momentum. Like, once Barty got to 5-2, 5-3, all of a sudden she was probably favoured for the set, even though she was still 5-3 down. As in, it was that kind of thing. But like, yeah, I wouldn't be harsh on Collins at all. As in, like, a brilliant story for her, brilliant tournament. As in, for anybody watching it, it would have been well highlighted that she had health issues, like, for a number of years, and they didn't really get to the bottom of at the time. So in her eyes, it kind of cost her a few years. It should have been diagnosed a bit earlier and maybe dealt with earlier. So a great story. Like she's a serious competitor. Like, as in, she seemed to love playing against Barty and the crowd nearly. She's a tough a tough nut from looking at her. So full credit to her as well. She made a match of it. To be fair, she made much more of a match of it than other people that Barty had played. So look, as I said, it just came down to maybe she's just better. That's basically it.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest compliment. I think, Mike, you've given Danielle Collins that, given how that first set had gone, previous opponents that have faced Ashleigh Barty would have basically folded, and this could have very easily been a 6-1, 6-2. But in fairness to Danielle Collins, regrouped, hit her purple patch, and really, Ashleigh Barty really had to play some good quality, solid tennis to get back into it. And I mean, getting to 6-all, there was kind of an outside chance maybe before that tiebreak that Collins could maybe make it. But I mean, the first few points of that tiebreak was so emphatic from Ashleigh Barty that only one winner, and it does finish up 7-2 on the tiebreak. And Australia and Ashleigh Barty can rejoice on a Grand Slam triumph.
Yeah, that's it, and huge for Australian tennis. We touched on that last week, and I think actually I hold my hands up and say I forgot one player. I think I said Leighton Hewitt would have been the last Australian winner of a Grand Slam, but there was a woman, Samantha Stosur. What year she won? Was it the US Open? She won. I should have a year for you, but maybe 2014, something like that. But a woman I forgot. But still, like, Ash Barty looks like she's kind of there to stay. We're saying that about the men. You have your big three, you have to keep going back to them, but Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer, and you're kind of looking for that in the women's. Who's going to be the kind of face of the WTA for the coming 2 years, 3 years? Osaka will be thereabouts. We know she had her issues. She's a big name, a big star, but like Ash Barty looks as if she'd be the one to beat for the rest of this year anyway, and she's still very young. Like, she seems very level-headed, etc. So she's definitely should be around for a good few years to come.
Yeah, I do agree with that, Mike. I thought it was good to see some of the more experienced tour players really get their chance to shine. Thinking of Cornet as well, had a magnificent tournament. The likes of Keys, great story in terms of last season, how devastating that season was from form. See her come back onto the big stage. Danielle Collins. As we said repeatedly here, this tournament was wide open. There were so many shocks. Zabalenka, we thought maybe last weekend could maybe hit a bit of a run, gets promptly knocked out next round. Swiatek as well, we thought maybe was the form person going into that bottom half of the draw. Didn't materialise, with Danielle Collins being outstanding. And I think it was just fitting. I think with Ash Barty, just in terms of Australia, really, it's been a superb summer of sport for Australia. Thinking of the cricket here, the men's Ashes was an emphatic series win for against England. Again, it continues that momentum here as well. And I thought maybe the trophy presentation was very, very poignant in terms of Yvonne Cawley presenting the trophy to Ash Barty as well. I thought it was great symbolism there in terms of the trophy presentation. And I think it did fulfill quite the story in terms of the women's singles game. And if we can get more and more competitive games like this, I think Barty is there to be shot at. French Open, next Grand Slam, obviously, clay courts. But you may see Badoza and a few other players that didn't really perform in this Grand Slam maybe come to the fore again. So I think it was an outstanding tournament, I think, from the women's singles side. And I think we have a very worthy winner in Ash Barty.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, that's it really. I mean, it's kind of the story everyone wanted. Again, definitely in Australia, it's what they wanted. And yeah, no, as in, full credit to her to drop 30 games throughout the whole tournament. I mean, I didn't look up any records or anything like that, but that must be pretty close to being a record. I mean, you're thinking of your Serena Williams in her heyday. Like, she might have gone through a tournament as easily as that. But apart from Serena and Venus, maybe when she was at the height of her powers, I don't know, has there been dominance like that? I mean, it's incredible. 30 games, and as I said, that's 4 games she lost on average per match. That's super stuff.
Yeah, I'm even thinking Martina Navratilova, even a Steffi Graf in her prime. But yeah, I mean, it was awesome from start to finish. I mean, the first round really did set the tone, an emphatic win there and never looked back. But I think, as you say, Ash Barty has the opportunity, and her comments after it is like she's still refining her game. There's still areas she feels that she can improve upon. I think that's autumn signs for the rest of the chasing pack. So I think the rest of the chasing pack need to probably get their have their work cut out to really compete here with Ash Barty, particularly when you see Wimbledon coming up and then also the US Open at the back end of the year. If Barty can remain injury free, I think she is the talisman of women's sport at the moment in tennis. So well done to Ashleigh. Then we can move on to the men's singles final here, Mike. What an attritional battle. 5 hours, 24 minutes. Rafa and Danielle literally produced. In my eyes, it was an absolute thriller. What was your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, look, it's fantastic. As in, I was it was hard to even like you was talking. What was it? 5 hours, 14 minutes, something like that. But like even to sit down for that long to watch it, I mean, is hard. Not mind be out there playing for that long. But like I was only asking someone there this afternoon. I was talking to him. I was saying over Rafa's kind of knocking around for maybe the last 17 years. He's 35 now. He came on the scene very young when he was 18. So we'll say 17 years. Like, can you think, Mark? Put you on the spot here. Like, is there a better competitor in sport over the last 17 years? And by competitor, I mean like just gives it everything. Like you can just never count this guy out. As in, he's just he's never beaten. Like until you're shaking hands with him at the net, you haven't been beaten because he's just an absolute warrior. Like,
Oh, that's a very good question. If I'm thinking Irish sports, I'm probably thinking of Kilkenny hurler like a Brian Cody or Henry Shefflin or a TJ Reid or someone to that effect. But I think globally, I'm very hard pressed. I'm struggling right now. Maybe a Tom Brady, NFL quarterback,
mm, yeah.
2 minute warning, that sort of thing. But I think for overall consistency, look, the dominance he's had, I think Rafa is a very good pick there, Mike. To be fair.
Yeah, and again, I look, not putting you on the spot there. I was struggling myself, but all I'd say is like individual sport, as in, the other people I think of. Yeah, like obviously there's super players in every sport, men, women, but like you're out there on your own. Like it's okay. Maybe in a team you can have a slightly off day, and you still come up with your moment of magic, and everyone thinks you were brilliant all match. But like, yeah, I don't know. I was just so impressed with him,
Yeah.
and I nailed my colors. I said like I'd be a Federer fan, but like how can you not love Rafa as well? As in, he's just this guy. He should have lost today. Like it's another one of those matches. After the second set, you're like, that's it. As in, he should have arguably won the second set. He struggled from the first game nearly to hold serve. Like as in, he's there pumping sweat after three games, and you're like, geez, will he last the pace? But sure, of course he did. Like you should never doubt him.
Yeah, no, exactly. Maybe the effect of the quarterfinal, semi-final maybe had a little bit of an impact on Rafa. If you think of Shapovalov, the Canadian really pushed him hard in 5 sets. I know there was a little bit of controversy with Shapovalov's comments regarding the gamesmanship of Rafa, but again, Berrettini 4 sets, it looked comfortable. But I suppose you're combining those sets as 4 sets, 5 sets, and then getting in with Medvedev as well, who's very fit. And to be fair to Medvedev as well, lead up to his final, it wasn't all play saying for him either. Like Auger Aliselmi from Canada, 5 sets, faced 2 sets down. We're looking at Zverev, and I mentioned last week that with Medvedev, I was very hesitant on my pick on that, and it nearly came to fruition. And then to Tsitsipas as well, my God, that was kind of a spiteful game that I have seen in quite a long time in terms of the outbursts and then the coaching kind of accusations being leveled at the Tsitsipas's father and stuff. And it kind of led again to this whole villain effect on Daniel Medvedev, looking to be, the purveyor that will destroy the home support favourite. And I mean, for the first 2 sets, I thought he played outstandingly well. Really had Nadal on the back foot, 23 aces throughout the match. But, the second set, or third set, he has the chance to literally take this game away. He's 2-3 up. It's advantage Medvedev looking at a break. I think that's a massive turning point of the game. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, it is like, but and I agree with you completely. As in, like, it looked as if he was going to beat him in three possibly, but I just there was a friend of mine actually messaged me during the match and more or less said, after the second set, oh, he's done pretty much. And again, it's not like you wouldn't want to be a genius again to say this, but like I didn't message the person back because I was like, if you write Rafa off, like you'd have done it 20 times in the past, or well, maybe not that many, but you'd write him off and after two sets of a match and you say, oh, he's done. But like you just can't, as in he just won't go away. Like I mean, he just finds a way. But so impressed with him and Medvedev, by the way. And like I mean, he could have been feeling sorry for himself there going into the fifth set, and he gave it everything as well. It was very entertaining, like, and they, as they'd say, they definitely left it all out there, like, and yeah, very, very impressive.
Yeah, indeed. I think Medvedev as well. I think the third set really did kind of rattle him, because then he had that little kind of exchange with the umpire regarding poor ball boys and ball girls in terms of how they were distributing the balls around the court. Like, obviously trying to get himself G'd up again. He may have hit a bit of a flat spot, but as you say yourself, Medvedev certainly did leave it out there, particularly in that fifth set where there was vulnerable moments for him. He did fight back very gamely, but I thought there were some shot selections there from Medvedev as well, kind of gave a little bit of a. And let's be brutally honest here. I think probably 95% of that crowd in the Ron Laver court was willing Rafa Nadal on, particularly from the third set on, to make a match of it. Medvedev was playing against a partisan crowd, and in fairness to him, he contributed massively to an incredible match. 5 hours 24 minutes, and again, an awful lot of stats. Looking at him, have gone Medvedev's way in terms of even winners. 76 winners to 64, I believe, for Nadal. As I said, the aces count 23 to 3. Service points 1 to Medvedev as well. So Medvedev will probably be scratching his head a little bit in terms of how he lost that. But credit to Nadal. Did he kind of maybe a little bit pressure off Nadal a little bit in that third set? He seemed to go for his shots an awful lot more, I thought, Mike. And they did come off for him.
Yeah, you said something there, Mark, that was quite accurate. You said about Medvedev's shot selection. That was in the third set, right? Wasn't that the period where he was going for drop shots kind of out of nowhere and kept going for drop shots? And like even watching it here on TV, you're kind of like, why is he doing that? Was it like he hadn't been doing it up to that point? So like, a drop shot, throw it in every so often, obviously for variety and keep your opponent guessing, but he seemed to nearly be kind of stubborn about it and was like, oh, I'm going to keep going for this till I get it. And it almost invited Rafa into it, basically. And sure, no better man to take the opportunity. But look, again, that's easy to say. Is it fatigue? Is it you get tired, you don't think as clearly as you should. Even there was break points there that Medvedev had. And, most people would know by now that Nadal is left-handed. So Nadal would have been serving to the advantage court, as they call it. So vast majority of the time Nadal is going to serve out wide, so he'd serve to Medvedev's backhand, and Medvedev didn't kind of step to that side. Like I was surprised, as in this happened 3-4 times in a row, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, take a gamble, as in move to your left, because it's way more likely that's where the ball is going to be. So just things like that, but like easy to be critical, obviously, like as in these guys are fantastic, and he's a super player, but is it just fatigue? And do you know what I think it is a lot of as well? It's the aura in Nadal, like as in Medvedev. Did you see that Nadal afterwards said that Medvedev asked him after the match kind of jokingly, oh, when are you going to retire? So like these guys, Nadal has won so much, he has that aura about him, that are you already in your mind when he starts coming back, do you start to panic a bit? You go, oh my God, here he goes again, kind of thing. It's just what he's built up over his career. Like it's like us saying here, he's never beaten. You as a player playing against him as an opponent, you must have that in the back of your mind. Oh God, here he comes. He won the third set. As in he's gonna keep coming after me. Like, so it's that kind of what would I say, that reputation he's built up, and justifiably he built it up over his full career, that he just doesn't go away, and that gets into opponents' heads, I suppose.
I think you're spot on there. Maybe Daniel Medvedev did spot the finishing line a bit too early as well, particularly when he was 2-3 up in that third set. But yeah, look at the body of work of Rafa. You could say that for Novak. You could say that with Roger as well. they do have that aura about them, don't they? It's a bit more. It's like the dominant force, of a particular sport. If you're the opponent, you feel you have to do more than you typically would do against another opponent. And yeah, and going back to your shot selection, I think with Daniel Medvedev, he did hit a bit of a flat spot, particularly in that third set. And I hit a heart back about that 2-3 game when it goes level to 3-all. He does hit the flat spot, and he does call the trainer, during the match as well, maybe the legs feeling a bit tight and looking to maybe shorten the rallies a bit, because the one thing Rafa is so good at is dogging out these results, the lengthy rallies, particularly from the baseline. There's no one better to vary out the play, and I thought his short angle forehand, particularly Mike, in the crucial periods of this, particularly from the third set on, really did start to we suddenly saw a few chinks in the armour, particularly in Medvedev's backhand, particularly let him down once or twice on the key points.
Yeah, and they did, but it's this thing, Mark, of these are best of 5 set matches. So apart from the Grand Slams, all the other tournaments would be best of 3 sets. So it's just you have to sustain. So you're playing against the best players in the world. So now Medvedev is number 2 in the world, so he's obviously brilliant as well. But it's Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. Do you believe that over, in this case, 5 hours? These guys, do you believe that you can beat them over 5 hours? They just kind of grind you down, and they've done it all before. As I said, it's that kind of mental thing of, Rafa won't be beaten. He's done it all his career. So, yeah, that's why they've won so much, because it's so hard to beat them over 5 sets, because they've just, they're too good anyway. And you can't sustain your level to finish them off, essentially, whereas the best of 3 match could be over really quickly. If all these guys are top class players, so if you can go out in a best of 3 set match, and if you can play brilliantly for an hour, or maybe an hour and 20 minutes, you've the match won. Whereas in Grand Slams, best of 5 set matches, you have to play brilliantly for 3 hours to win a match against, a Nadal, a Djokovic, or a Federer. And now all of a sudden, if they can just keep you out there, which Nadal did to Medvedev today, you're going to hit a little slump, and now they're back into it. And it's just hard to finish them off, because you have to get to 3 sets. I know you'd watch it there today and you think, God, Medvedev, he won the first set quite easily, it seemed. Won the second set, and as I said, we'd all be thinking, God, Nadal's finished here, he's in trouble. But you have to sustain that level again, and that's what the next generation of players, we're back to it again. The big 3, even though Federer is 40 now, let's be honest about it. So it's kind of Djokovic and Nadal, being straight about it. But can you sustain that level long enough to beat them? And they can't at the moment. Is what happens most of the time.
Yeah, because I think you're bringing up a good point. We kind of see with the young guns here, particularly on the Nadal side of the draw, particularly when it came to the quarterfinals, semi-final stage. We did see flashes of brilliance from the likes of Shapovalov, Berrettini as well, from Italy as well, who will contend definitely in the grass and hard court season. But again, it was the key moments again where Nadal, he's now sees guile. He makes you hit that one extra shot that you think you shouldn't need to execute, and your mind is probably on the next point. He's so good in terms of, that dogfight, but, his skills as well today. In the key exchanges, I thought he was just absolutely superb. The break points were clinically executed as well from Nadal. But it does bring up a great point, labouring on my point a little bit here, Michael. But it does kind of mention, we've talked about Alexander Zverev, we've talked now about Daniel Medvedev. How do you feel in terms of, Mike, even from a Daniel Medvedev's coaching team perspective? Is this going to be a bit of a challenge to get Daniel Medvedev's psyche or mentality back? To really get over the finishing line in a major final going forward, because he had this game under control for 2 sets, and to lose in this manner, it would be devastating for most players.
Yeah, well, we have to give Medvedev credit. He's won the US Open last year, so he has got over the line, but he won that one in 3 straight sets. So against Djokovic, so it's different, as in this will obviously hurt him big time, as in it's one he'll feel he should have won. And I like him. He's a bit of a he's a bit of a pantomime villain, isn't he? He seems to kind of almost. I know people mightn't like you shouldn't see him giving out to the umpire, and particularly today at the ball boys and ball girls, like there's no need for that at all. But that seems to be his kind of way of motivating himself, if you like. So he's a character anyway. He's something different in the game. But look, I think he's so close, like such fine margins. He's won one before. He was really, really close to winning one today. So I think he's a potential winner again throughout the year. It's the rest of them below that you'd be kind of like, we said this about Zverev, until he actually goes and does it, you can't be, you know what I mean, as in there'll always be doubts. Same with Tsitsipas, like really talented, really good player, but you have to go and do it. And at some point along the way, if you want to win one of them, you're going to have to beat Nadal or Djokovic if they're fit and healthy. And if they get into the tournament, in some cases, if they're allowed into the country, you're going to have to be good enough to beat them. And you have to be able to beat them over 5 hours because they won't just give it to you like.
Which is the proper way of, match should be kind of played, and, particularly with these guys. It will be interesting. I think the ramifications of this may be huge, I think you say. Mike, I'd be very interested to see how the Berrettinis, the Shapovalovs, Auger Aliassime as well, definitely probably would feel that maybe a chance for him that was opportunity lost there a little bit, particularly in that quarterfinal when he was 2 sets up against Medvedev. Yeah, there is a little bit of, particularly Zverev, but there are underlying question marks over these guys, whether they can, prolong their performance levels, particularly when you get to a semi-final, final of a Grand Slam. And until they do that, Nadal probably will kind of recuperate now and kind of enter into the hard courts in the clay season. Obviously, France, he would be hotly favoured, I would say, Mike, to secure another Grand Slam on top of he's 21 already. So, it doesn't get any easier for those guys looking at Rafa there today.
Yeah, and we all can imagine, I don't know, would you have sat down and watched the match, but I know Djokovic and Federer put out tweets or messages afterwards congratulating Nadal, so you'd imagine they did watch it, but like this is we're coming full circle here, Mark. We spent the first podcast or a portion of it talking about Novak and not getting into the country, unvaccinated, etc. But like this couldn't have gone any worse for him, as in the worst possible outcome for him was Nadal to win it. So he now moves on to 21 Grand Slams and has the clay court season. Again, for people who don't know it, Nadal has won the French Open 13 times. He's only ever been beaten 3 times at Roland Garros in the last 17 years. So like he will be favoured for the French Open, which could put him 2 ahead of Djokovic, 2 Grand Slams ahead of him. But I said Nadal has been beaten 3 times at the French Open. Twice, 2 of those times were by Djokovic. So Djokovic is the only current player to have beaten Nadal at Roland Garros. So we'll be back to this maybe if we do another podcast in a few months, Mark. At the moment, as it stands, you can't get into France unless you're vaccinated. So it could be history repeating itself in another few months, as in, does Djokovic now feel, oh God, if I don't play the French Open, now Nadal will be on the likelihood is he'll be on number 22 and I'll still be on number 20. Does that come into his reckoning? Like you said it there, Nadal now can basically go and put his feet up for a couple of months, essentially, if he wants, and just time his run for the French Open where he's at home, like as in he must be so confident every time he goes there, and he'll be even more confident after this. I mean, this was a massive win for him. According to himself, it was unexpected, as in I didn't realize, or I don't think many people did, he was physically not in a good way, he was saying a month and a half ago at all. So it was as in a real bonus win for him is what you think. And like, yeah, he'll take huge confidence now for the French Open. And who'll stop him at the moment? You'd say only Djokovic can stop him. So we'll see how that will play out.
Exactly. I think you raised an awful lot of massively good points there, Mike. In terms of Djokovic looking at home back in Belgrade, I think, unmitigated disaster in terms of who's actually won the Grand Slam. Yeah, I think the French Open becomes into sharp focus now. In terms of Novak, again, BBC News again did an undercover investigation in terms of the lead up to Novak and this COVID exemption in Australia. Still identifying key questions in terms of that, in terms of the COVID test in Serbia, based on the dates. So I think that story's going to run and run and run for Novak, unfortunately. And yeah, it's for Rafa Nadal. I think looks the fresher guy of the two today, which you have to compliment Rafa Nadal's backroom team to get Rafa to the position where he was today in the fifth set in 5 hours, 20 minutes, getting into that kind of key kind of area, game winning, moments here where he does literally, really drive on to get over the line. I mean, his service game is nothing short of sensational to close it out. And I mean, that's all down to the backroom staff, the fitness and conditioning. And as you say yourself, he was not in good shape in December. There's pictures floating there on the social media networks in terms of Rafa kind of looking pretty forlorn there, outside the hospital. And, it's an amazing transformation. So, I mean, all credit to Rafa. Congratulations. And it bodes well for an exciting season. And I think, Novak will have to respond. And hopefully Roger comes back, in good shape. And again, we mentioned the front three there. And it sounds as if these leading three tennis greats are going to really dictate again in terms of Grand Slams. And whoever on below the pecking order does beat them, God, their opportunities for a Grand Slam really have diminished, given that you've Novak out, you've Roger out, Rafa probably not at 100%, but still gets the job done. It must be pretty dispiriting for anyone below that pecking order. But all in all, I think it was a satisfactory end to the tournament, I would say, for the Australian Open organisers, given all the Novak Djokovic chaos beforehand, for a 5 hour 24 minute final. It really did provide a spectacular end to the tournament. Mike, any kind of other players kind of stand out for you in the men's side of the draw that, we've kind of been talking about the top three, but anyone that you have maybe a little bit more high hopes on after their performance in Australia?
Yeah, the two Canadians, Mark, is in, and again, like, these are guys who made the quarterfinals. So Denis Shapovalov, who lost to Nadal in 5 sets, definitely up and coming. These are guys, they're the next kind of couple of years younger. They're in their early 20s, whereas your Zverevs and your Tsitsipas now are, mid 20s, which is still incredibly young, obviously. But like, you're kind of thinking, are these the guys who will eventually break through? Are you looking at your 21-year-olds now who will actually push on and have the ability, have the I don't want to say the battle, but I don't know, is that the word? Will they actually finally take over from your Nadals and your Djokovic's, like, and have they don't have that fear, maybe, or because that's what it nearly seems like, is, and do these players actually believe that it's like any sport, they've been so dominant? Do you actually believe when it comes to the crunch that you could beat these guys? So yeah, Shapovalov looks as if he's got what would you say, the character for it, as in, even, look, right or wrong, he had an argument with Nadal, as in he called it out that, in his opinion, Nadal and the top players get kind of preferential treatment, which, let's be honest, they probably do. Again, it's like any sport, is in the top teams generally get the decisions from the referees, or they get the little small calls in their favor. That's what happens, whether that's human nature or not, I don't know. But again, Nadal, I'm sure, would say he doesn't, but he's earned that, like, over his career, as in, he didn't get them at the start. So if you start dominating, you nearly earn these little small decisions. That argument, by the way, with Shapovalov and Nadal was to do with time. And again, people might be aware there's a shot clock kind of in tennis now, that between points it's meant to be 25 seconds, but it's one of those ones, like, it's a rule, but it's not always enforced. So, and that would be one criticism, if there is one criticism of Nadal, would be that he is not very, what's the word I'm looking for, he doesn't always stick to that time. And like, the kind of sportsmanship side of it in tennis would be that you're meant to play at the pace of the person who's serving. So, like, if the person is ready to serve, you shouldn't be making them wait the whole time to serve. But anyway, that's what that argument was about. So whatever way you look at the argument, at least in some ways, Shapovalov had the guts or the battle to actually stand up to Nadal and kind of call him out on it. So maybe that shows a bit of character in him that, will drive him on and get him to the top level. And the other guy who I thought was very good is, as you said, Felix Auger Aliassime, only 21, should have or could have beaten Medvedev. Would have been a breakthrough win for him. who, funnily enough, by the way, Tony Nadal is Rafa's uncle, and he coached Rafa for years and years until, since he was a kid, until he was 30 years of age, and they didn't have any falling out or anything. I suppose they just parted ways amicably. But he started helping to coach Auger Elise. So look, if he can do as much with him as he did with Rafa, he's a good chance of being a big name in the future. And one last one to give you, actually, and a guy I didn't know too much of, an 18-year-old who I saw twice play in the tournament, who I thought was very impressive. And he was the number 31 seed, but he's only 18 years of age. But Carlos Alcarez Garcia, or Garcia, possibly in Spanish, if I pronounced that right, but another Spaniard. But yeah, thought he looked the business, as in for an 18-year-old. Thought he was very impressive, and you'd be thinking, what could he do in the next 3 years? Maybe he'll have to build it up in terms of fitness and strength. But I thought for an 18-year-old, he was very impressive, and if he can continue to improve, maybe we could have another Spaniard taking over from Rafa.
Very possibly. I think they're great picks there, Michael. And Mike, to be honest, Shapovalov, I mean, if there's not motivation for the rest of the year, given how the Nadal match went, I think, the guy can forget about it, really. I think he should have an extra drive, an extra gear to kind of really succeed this year and even into next year. Geez, the Canadian national tennis team look as if they're in superb shape. I mean, granted, they're kind of, team event win at the start of the year. I mean, you have two guys like that on the men's side really kind of pulling trees. I mean, that they're going to be dangerous in terms of when the kind of Federation Cups happen. But yeah, I'd agree with you there anyway. For me, I think Shapovalov is probably the key guy there to maybe have a watch out for. And yeah, hopefully Daniel Medvedev as well, if he can kind of regroup after this Grand Slam. Very dangerous in terms of US Open, would be the reigning champion. So it's just a kind of the mental, composure, from that setback today, I think will be key. Mike, we'll leave it there anyway. I'd like to thank you for the last 3 episodes. We've gotten an awful lot of great feedback from social media on the coverage. And yeah, I'd love to have you back. Talk about any more pressing tennis events or news stories as the year goes on.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We'll do that hopefully. And the French Open is in May, so plenty of tennis between that and the French Open is in lots of big tournaments. But yeah, the French Open is the next Grand Slam in May, so we can we'll see who's been winning or who's been improving in the next few months.
Exactly, Mike. Sounds like a plan. So thanks for all your time anyway. Last 2 weeks anyway, much appreciated.
Okay, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.